Aloha, and welcome to the Sylvan Bell Business Growth and Exit Strategy Podcast, your guide to building companies that command maximum multiples. I'm Sylvan Bell, author of 5 books on business strategy and sales, creator of the Sell Framework, Scale Framework, and Driver Test. I work with owners of $10 million to $250 million companies, whether you're scaling for growth or positioning for a profitable exit. Each episode breaks down one framework, strategy, or concept you can apply this week to grow revenue systematically, scale operations, and maximize enterprise value. Let's get started. Welcome to episode number 32, the SCORE Framework Part 1, System and Customer Concentration for the Exit Ratio 360. And what you're going to find is SCORE stands for Systems Maturity, Concentration Risk, Owner Independence, Revenue Quality, and Exit Timing. Because you can have the best product in your market and the strongest revenue in your sector and still watch a buyer walk away in the first 48 hours of due diligence, because what's in your head isn't an asset, it's a straight up liability. If you wanted to know the first two dimensions that private equity, private investors, or single investors come in and take a look at, it's systems maturity and it's client concentration. So how good are your systems and how much client concentration do you have? If you have bad systems, they're gonna be like, yeah, we might pass. Or, hey, we're going to take this from an A-level deal to a C-level deal because there's too much chaos. Or what they're going to say is, hey, you have too much risk for client concentration. Why don't you fix that and then come back to us in 12 months or 18 months? And you might have missed out on the market giving you the maximum multiple. There's a reason why SCORE carries the biggest weight inside of the exit ratio 360. Is because this is the most important factor when it comes to you working the best deal that you can after deciding that you actually want to sell. Once you pass ready and once you pass launch, SCORE is where it's at. That's why it carries the biggest weight. If everything lives in your head or you have concentration of a client above 30%, you're a major risk. That's not a minor red flag for a buyer, for private equity, or for an investor. That's a billboard-sized red flag. And it's going to cost you. And it's going to be one of those things that could be the difference between you buying a house on the beach and spending time on the beach on the summer. When investors, private equity, companies look at deals, they evaluate risk. It's a ratio. That's where exit ratio named 360 comes from, because it's a ratio that they take a look at. It's how much risk is involved. And buyers underwrite transferability first. Can this be duplicated without the owner? Can this be duplicated without the founder? Can this be duplicated without the doctor or the practitioner? And if the business, the operation, or the practice can't prove that it can run without the owner, the revenue starts looking like it's not that good. Your multiple starts going down. Sure, you can absolutely be replaced. But what most companies, most investors are looking for is to hit the ground running from day one. SCORE inside of the Exit Readiness 360 is the biggest for a reason, because it measures 5 dimensions of exit readiness. And the first 2 are where most mid-market businesses hemorrhage points. But most of them don't know that they're losing it. Systems maturity is going to ask, are your operations documented, repeatable, and trainable by somebody who isn't you? Not you, somebody else. Customer concentration or client concentration asks, if your biggest client left tomorrow, does the business survive? So you got a role, responsibility, job, whatever you want to call it, is to pick your process and ask yourself if a new hire could execute from documentation without calling you. Could I bring in somebody and have them run whatever the process or the playbook is? And if they can't, that's a sign it's not just a ding, it's going to be a dent. Then look at your top clients, a percentage of their total revenue. Who's in there? How many do you have? And if your biggest client left tomorrow, how big of a mess is it going to create for you? I was working with an organization about 3 years ago, and one of their clients took 50%. It was 50% of the revenue was one client, and they threatened to leave. And they knew they were 50%. They knew that they had negotiation power. And that negotiation power dropped their profitability because they went in and said, we're not going to pay what we're paying. It's protection against an event, like somebody coming in and saying, we're not going to pay you what you were being paid anymore because we know we're your biggest client. You've signaled to us that we're your biggest client. And it's one of the things that you really want to be prepared for. There are stats and numbers that you should absolutely pay attention to. This is one of them. Problems hide typically in two zones. And the first one's going to be phantom systems and phantom operations. You may have created a plan 3, 4, 5 years ago, and the SOP book or binder sits somewhere holding up a lamp in the back corner, or it's on a hard drive of a computer that's in a storage in a warehouse, and you don't know where it's at. That's not documentation. It's decoration. It's a hope and a prayer. And that's not just a ding. It's going to be a major dent. You really want to know where these plans, these processes, this documentation is, and can it be followed? It's not just good enough for you to have it somewhere. It's not just cool enough for you to be able to print it out. Does it still work? Like if you pulled out one of those playbooks right now, could you hand it off to anybody in the organization in that department and say, run this playbook? And have them do it with certainty. If they're looking like this is old, or we're not even on that system anymore, we wouldn't even have that program, or this was written by somebody who doesn't work here and hasn't been here because they retired, it's a sign from the business gods. I'm pointing to the sky. It's a sign from the business gods. You got a problem and you're going to get whacked on your multiple. Next, take a look at your client concentration. For real. Who are your top 10 clients? And what number do they represent towards your revenue? My belief is that when you take a look at your representation of clients, nobody in that group should make up more than 20% of your total revenue. My belief, okay? My belief. Preferably 10% if possible, because in business, they got the 30-20-10 rule. And Excel Eddie loves this stuff. This is what Excel Eddie loves to find. Like, hey, here's a problem, here's a ding, here's a dent. Ooh, we got an issue. I've met this dude. I've met Excel Edwina. They're all the same person. Right? They're very good at what they do. I'm not knocking them. It's their role and their responsibility to spot these things and red flag them. And you need to know that this is what they do. This is what they're good at. They probably graduated from a really good school. They're probably making about 200, 250 grand a year because they're exceptional at what they do. And they're looking for these billboard red flags of client concentration inside of the books, and they're going to have no problem pointing it out. They're going to come and say, hey, listen, I'm looking at this Excel number. It's J34. And we're looking at J34, and you got a client that makes up 18% of your business. They're the biggest profit. It's not just that they make up, 18% of your business. They're the biggest amount of profit that you bring in. If they leave, we're at risk. So now it's a risk factor. Now it's a ratio. And you better hope that that's not what it is. So if you can diversify these parts and pieces of your business right now, you're miles ahead. And there's going to be a conversation, whether it's private equity, private investor, individual investor. They're going to ask, tell me about your client concentration, your customer concentration. Who's your biggest client? And if they left, what's going to happen? You want your own selling thesis. Like buyers have a buyer's thesis. You want a selling thesis, and you want it written. And you want to know it well before you have these conversations, because you're going to get taken to lunch. You're going to get taken to dinner. You're going to jump on a Zoom call or a Google Meet call or whatever version that the group is using. And they're going to say, hey, we're looking at your financials. We're looking at cell number J34. Tell us about it. And you're like, oh, yeah, totally understand. That's our client. They make up 12% of our business. Profitability. They're okay on profitability, but we've got better clients. Our sales team's working on that right now. We got 1 or 2 businesses that are meant to replace. Like, you want your thesis to sound something like that, where you're rattling off the facts, that you have the ability to demonstrate, like, hey, here's what we're up against. When you have both undocumented processes and revenue risks at the same time, that is a point where investors, private equity, companies, individual investors start saying, we got problems. And when you hear we got problems, what they're going to translate that to is, we're going to devalue your deal. You're not going to get the maximum multiple. You're going to get the okay multiple. It's your job. It's your role. It's your responsibility to get the maximum multiple. You're the one that's had the sleepless nights. You're the one that's had employees quit on you. You're the one that had to bootstrap and make things happen. I think of my parents, in the early days of my parents being entrepreneurs. And as a kid, we ate the same thing every night, mac and cheese or some sort of tuna casserole, because my mom and dad were bootstrapping the company and they didn't have the money. I wore hand-me-down clothes. Like, there were second and third generation hand-me-down clothes. So like when you're like, hey, Scott, have you ever lived through this? Yeah. As a kid, I've lived through it. The first business that I did, I lived through it. This is real deal for people. Like, Let's just do some simple math to put this system, process, idea, concept for you. If you've got a $10 million company and you've got $2 million in profit, okay, 20%. And a private equity company, private investor comes to you and says, we're going to give you a 5-time multiple. They're going to give you $10 million for your company. But then they start looking at client concentration. They start looking at documentation. We're going to take one of those multiples away. We're going to give you 4. Okay, you just went from a $10 million valuation to an $8 million. And over the span of your retirement, if you're taking a $200,000 salary right now, you just cut out 10 years of your retirement. Just because you don't have documented processes, just because you're not prepared, you're not ready to go. And here's the thing you need to know. I say this a lot. If you don't fix it, they will. They'll come in and buy you at a discount. They're like, yeah, we'll buy you at $8 million. No problem. We love $8 million. $8 million sounds fantastic. We like it. We love it. We want some more of it. And then what they do is within 6 months to 12 months, whatever problems that you didn't want to fix and you didn't want to take care of, they take care of it. Now that company's way more valuable. They bought you at a discount, right? I used to flip cars. And one of the things that you do before you flip a car is you go put half a tank of gas in there, you wash it, you clean up the tires, you clean up the engine bay. And the difference between a clean car and a not so clean car could be the difference of a couple of grand. In a business, it could be a couple $100,000, it could be a couple million. And for the right size of business, it could be tens of millions. These are things that you want to pay attention to. It's your money. You should get every cent of it that you can. And message from your sponsor, Sylvan Bell. That's me. If you're getting value from this episode, here's how to go deeper. First, subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Party, at scottsylvanbell.com. That's where I share the strategies, frameworks, and case studies I don't release anywhere else. You'll get one actionable insight every week you can implement inside your business immediately. Second, while you're on the site, download the complete Sell Framework, Scale Framework, and Drivers Test, all free with scoring guides, worksheets, and step-by-step implementation checklist. These are the same frameworks I use with $10 million to $250 million companies to build systematic revenue, scale operations, and maximize enterprise value. Go to scottsylvanbell.com right now, subscribe to the newsletter, grab the frameworks, and let's keep building companies that command maximum multiples. Let's get going. One of the things that I want to point out is client concentration, SOPs. They don't just change or lower your price, they change who may invest and buy in you. Strategic acquirers, they have acquisition lists and they have what they're looking for. Some companies might have the ability to absorb what you don't have, and they're like, yeah, not that big of a deal. But if you're going to take your business and you're going to put it on the market, you want to have the best opportunity for your selling thesis to be exactly what it is. Like, I've got the best running company in the area. You want to be a platform company. You want to have the most amount of offers that you can get. You want to be able to compare those offers. You want to be able to say, hey, here's the type of company that I want to have buy me, or private equity group. What you don't want is to be a one of one, where it's just one company that wants to buy you. You want multiple companies to be able to say, hey, we want to buy your business, because you can pit them against each other. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you tell them, hey, listen, you have your selling criteria. Buyers have their buying criteria. You as a seller should have your selling criteria, right? Some people will tell me, hey, Scott, I just want the maximum multiple. Some people say, hey, Scott, I got to cross between the maximum multiple and how my people are going to be treated. And some people will say, I don't care about the multiple. I got enough money. The only thing that I care about is how my employees are treated. It's your decision. I can't tell you what to do. I can help you get there. I can help you with the answer of what direction do you want it to be. At the end of the day, that's a you thing. That's where do you want to be? It's not just the concentration of clients. It's also systems. When systems aren't taken care of, the buyer pool shrinks as well. Platform companies, they look for add-ons. They look for like, hey, we're going to bring the easiest company in and we're going to tuck it into our organization because there's no dependency risk. We can scale this fast. Distressed assets are going to be moved to the bottom and they're going to be bought for a tuck-in. A platform company is this, if you don't know. A platform company is the best in the area, the best in the market, the best in the region, who's got a really good name, who's got really good quality. They're the grade A company. They're the grade A plus company. And then so what private equity, individual investors, investor groups do is they'll go to a market. They'll say, who's the platform company that we could buy? And they'll look around. They'll look for the A plus companies and they'll go, great, A plus company. Let's take it. We like it. We love it. We want some more of it. And then what they do is they look for the C level and the B level companies, and they move it under that brand. You don't want to be a C or a B. You want to be an A. That gives you the maximum multiple. That gives you the ability to demand your selling thesis and to have what you want. So you may say, hey, Scott, great. Love it. I hear what you're saying. What do we do? What's fix number one? Start with your top 10 generating revenue processes. What are the workflows? Who's in charge of them? How are they operated? Map each one out, not like the ideal version. Map them out for real. Who actually runs it and what do they do? And then score each one. Is it documented? Is it current? Could a new person execute based upon what the documentation says? And that's going to help you with your maturity score inside of SCORE. For client concentration, build a revenue concentration dashboard. And every client is a percentage of trailing 12 months or your TTM. Right? What does this look like the past 12 months? What's the history? Because buyers are coming in, they're going to buy the history. They're buying the future, but what they're really focused on is what was the history like for the past 3 years? What was it really like for the past 12 months? And then look and say, hey, where do I stand? Because you can't fix what isn't measured. What you're going to want to do for fix number 2 is people. Assign ownership to the people who run the processes, not to you. Who owns it? Can't be you, because you're going to be leaving, or you're going to be growing your company just to be ready to sell when the time is right. Right? Where are the documents? Who writes the documents? How are they created? Are they all universal? Does everybody do it the same way? That should be a standard. And then where are they stored? And then how often are they taken a look at? Be like, realistically, you should be looking at your SOPs every 90 days and running through them. Do they work? And then do a dry run through. Hey, show me that you can run this process. And if you change products, vendors, software, it's a sign, pointing to the sky if you're listening, it's a sign from the business gods that you got to take a look at your standard operating procedures. If you change software, that should be one of the things that you negotiate for, is that the new company helps you write those SOPs. Like that right there, like a condition of us doing business with you is you bring your team in and you help us write the SOPs. Or you have a dashboard or a learning management, an LMS, a learning management system for us to work from. And that's going to be included for what we do. Or it could just be a negotiation point. For sales, you want a diversification target. You want to go to your team and say, we're not just going to get more clients. Here's the criteria that we need. We need this much revenue and we need this much profit over the next quarter, over the next couple of quarters, over the next couple of months. It's going to take some spearheading. It's going to take some work and effort. You got this. You built a company doing at least 10 million in rev. You have every capability of doing this. It's just sometimes comes down to the tough conversation. You want to have some evidence on this. And what this is going to be is fire drills or red team exercises, whatever you want to call it. That you've gone through the top 10 parts of each division and you looked at the revenue generating processes or the hiring processes or the onboarding processes and score them. Like, hey, we've gone through and yeah, everything still works. It's not broken. And we are on top of it. And then it comes down to who trains the people, who's in charge of training somebody for the onboard process. And then what's the test out look like? When I was a corporate sales trainer, I created tests for everything because I never wanted anything to roll back on me, say, hey, Scott, the team wasn't trained. I'd be like, really? There's no way that happened because you sat in on the test that every employee took for your department and you saw and you signed off on it. And it's on the job folder. That was one of the ways that I took a lot of stress and pressure off of me, was making sure that at the end of the training, at the end of the rotation, at the end of the process, that everybody took a test. And, some of it was subjective and some of it was easy. Some of it was hard. But what I did was I took the most common problems, the most common complaints that managers had, the most common issues that would happen out in the field. And every one of those got turned into a question. What do you do in this situation? What do you do when a client's upset? What do you do if, a strange situation happens? What do you do if you get an upset client on the phone? I went through every department. That was my role. My responsibility was to work with every department. I had, at the height, 260 employees underneath me. But every department had quizzes and tests for this very reason. And then when that company sold, it sold for 9 figures. I ended up leaving 6 months before it sold. But gosh darn it, all the processes that I put in place were there when they did sell. That's proof. That's proof of capability. So this week, you got a task, you've got a job, you've got a role, you've got a responsibility. Pull two numbers. First, your largest single client as a percentage of trailing 12-month revenue. Write it down. And then second, pick your single most important operating process inside of the organization and ask a mid-level executive or a mid-level employee to execute it, just on the existing documentation. No phone calls, no questions, no helpline. Well, let me get a buddy. No, Morse code, no smoke signals. No, I'm just going to go ask Sarah. It's, can you do it off of existing documentation? Then take a look at the score of the client. Then take a look at the score of what the employee, the executive was able to do with the documentation and say, are we prepared? And if you're not, is it going to be a ding or is it going to be a dent? Remember, it's your job, it's your role and responsibility to get the maximum multiple. Like, pick something unless you got a big enough team to make this happen. It's either systems or concentration. If your top client is above 20%, that's a sign, I'm pointing to the sky. It's a sign from the business gods that that's probably the right one to start. Or if your standard operating procedures are at 0, flip a coin, because either one of them is going to work. Or if you got a big enough team, get somebody to help you with both of them at the same time. Like, make it an initiative that's got to be taken care of. Now, here's the thing. You may say, hey, Scott, based upon what we're talking about, I don't want to sell. There may be a point in your life where you wake up one day, and it's probably going to be when you're 45, 50, 55, or 60. A friend or a relative retires, or you have a major life event where you're like, I just want out. And if you have all of this in place, you're ready to go. You could be sold within a matter of 6 months, instead of some of the companies that come to me and they're like, we've had major events happen. Can we sell in 6 months? Like, we should have had this conversation 2 years ago. Like, you're 2 years behind. That optionality alone for you makes it massively easier for you to get the maximum multiple. Mahalo for listening to the Scott Sylvan Bell Business Growth and Exit Strategy podcast. Here's what's available to you right now. First, subscribe to this podcast so you get every framework we release. Second, visit scottsylvanbell.com to access the Sell Framework, Scale Framework, and Driver Test. All free with complete scoring guides and implementation worksheets. Third, subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Party, where I break down strategies and frameworks you won't find anywhere else with one actionable insight every week. Go to scottsylvanbell.com and enter your email. And if this episode added value, share it with another business owner building a $10 million to $250 million company. Until next time, keep building companies that command maximum multiples. Aloha.